Hello and thank you for joining us. This is Health Matters on Channels Television. I am Mary Alala Yusuf. The world now has a record of more than 234 million confirmed COVID-19 cases. By Friday, October the 1st, the death toll was over 4.7 million. In Nigeria, there were more than 205,000 confirmed cases of COVID-19, more than 193,000 recoveries, and 2,723 deaths. Recovery rate is about 94%. Case fatality is 1.3%. Tested samples are now over 3 million. Drum roll. Globally, over 6 billion COVID-19 vaccines have been administered, while in Nigeria, over 4 million have got a first shot and over 2 million people are now fully vaccinated. In 2020, going on to our subject for the day, about 275 million people used drugs and more than 36 million suffered from drug abuse disorders, according to the United Nations Office on Drugs and Crime, and according to their World Drug Report. The same UNODC source says drug use killed almost 500,000 people in 2019. The percentage of adolescents who perceive regular cannabis use as harmful has dropped by as much as 40%, and the UNODC is saying people need to know the truth about drugs if more lives are to be saved. My guest is the consultant psychiatrist and medical director, Grace Hill Place Hospital, a mental health and addiction treatment center. You are welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me on the show.
Of course, my first question is, what is regular cannabis? Is there an irregular type of cannabis? And people are perceiving, 40% more people are perceiving that it's not such a bad thing. Yeah. So let's know what this regular cannabis is anyway.
Well, it's the challenge with cannabis today. Cannabis has become the number one substance that is abused, particularly in our country, Nigeria.
Is that what we call Igbo?
Yes, famous
okay.
Igbo, yes.
Yes,
famous
sure.
Igbo, famous Indian hemp, famous Ghana weed, Arizona, Colorado, and all of that.
And Colorado.
Yes, they are all actually forms of cannabis, and the famous cannabis. And that's because many people today often argue that it's a natural plant, okay. That's the argument. And just like your introduction said, that many people need to know the truth about drugs. So what is out there on the streets and what is out there on the internet, I dare say it's a lot of false information.
So cannabis is harmful?
Yes, it is. Yes, it is. Now, and every time I get to have this, I mean, we've had this conversation in the past, and every time we have this, I get feedbacks, and people say, well, Doc, I agree with you with every other thing you said, but you're wrong about, cannabis. And I'm like, no, it's not, I'm not wrong, because we get to see people who are struggling with one form of addiction or the other. So let me even give a classical example, which some people may not readily agree with, but it's there and it's the fact. Something called the amotivation syndrome. Quite a number of people who abuse cannabis, some of them have suffered where they lack motivation to do things. They just want to get high from morning till night. In fact, recently I was discussing with a 19-year-old student, and he said, I had to stop because I realized that at some point I wasn't going to classes. I just wanted to just take weed in the morning and take weed in the evening. So my classes started suffering, and then
he stopped.
So he knew that he had to stop.
Let's pause a minute there. Yeah. Let's pause.
Yeah.
I am overcome.
Okay.
He understood his problem.
Yes, he did.
Even while he was taking the drug.
Oh yeah.
And he stopped.
He stopped.
Is he a strange sort of person? Because the impression I had is that people don't really have the power to stop on their own.
Yeah. Well, that's another trick about cannabis. So cannabis doesn't have the regular, what we call the physiological withdrawals, which is, for instance, cigarettes. When you try to stop cigarettes, there is a discomfort, there's this edge you feel, this anxiety, you are quite uncomfortable until you smoke again, then this tension goes down. Cannabis doesn't give you that. So it's a false sense of, okay, I can actually do without it. So the person, it gives you this false sense that, well, I don't feel any discomfort when I don't use. I just like to use, and I can like to stop.
And that's what makes them continue.
Exactly. Okay. So before they realize that, I'm kind of hooked, because the person will say, look, I can go 1 month without using and then go back. You see, sometimes in defining addiction and in explaining addiction, I often like to say it this way. If your drug of choice begins to determine the people you hang out with, then it tells you are beginning to choose the drug over you. So for instance, if you start choosing friends or start cutting off from friends just because you want to keep doing that habit, or you start arguing with your family members and people are talking to you, but you are like, I would rather do this, and you all have to understand me, it's
then
like,
you know that you've chosen the drug over yourself.
Yeah.
Wow. Cannabis is really, it's an important discussion, because we have lots and lots of it in Nigeria.
That's
in
correct.
fact, in some places they are growing it and saying that it should be used medically.
Yeah, that's correct.
Are we ready for this?
Well, that has been a lifelong argument, and some countries have gone ahead to legalize it, and yes, it does have its benefits. It does have its benefits. But
isn't that when it is purified and separated?
Perfect. Yeah, so there is something called CBC, and then there's the THC component of cannabis and the CBC component. So the CBC component is more medicinal. So the ones that are for medicine or used for medicine are high in content of CBC, but the ones on the streets are not high on CBC. And many times when people even say, oh, it's medicinal, I often ask, what medical condition are you treating?
Exactly. Exactly.
So they're like,
and this separation has to be done professionally, right?
Yes, and just
so there's no excuse to be taking cannabis.
Yes, and that's simple. Well, if we make it so simple, someone was just going to turn off the TV right now and say, I'm not watching this. They obviously don't know the benefits of cannabis. I'm not saying it doesn't have its benefits. I'm not saying that it doesn't give you what they say it will give you. The only thing is that the truth, like they say, half truth is a lie.
Is a lie.
Exactly. So what you think it's doing for you, because many times people come into rehab and they say, what, doc, stop me from taking crack, stop me from heroin, but leave my weed, because my weed has always been good to me. And then I'm like, are you aware that the use of weed increases your chances of having a psychotic breakdown 6 times compared to someone who's not on it? And some people say, look, I've been using it for many years, nothing has happened. I always like to share the story of someone who shared his story, that I think he had used for 17 years, and it was in the 17th year he had a mental breakdown. If you had asked that person or argued with that person, and the 12th year would be like, I've been using drugs for 12 years, nothing has happened. The fact that you've been using it does not mean that you are not increasing the risk.
These effects, do they happen suddenly, or is it a slow feed that they don't realize that they're going downhill?
So it's usually slow. That's the thing. It's subtle, it's insidious meaning that it goes slowly. So it's not very glaring. You start out, you take what is referred to as puff pass. You start out like just, it's a puff, and then we pass it amongst ourselves. It's really not much. Then after that, it's like, okay, I can do like half a rap, then I can do a rap, then I'm doing 2 raps. So it's just slow.
If you have to be grooming yourself to get there.
No, it's the feeling. The feeling is fantastic. The feeling, many people will tell you, look, it keeps me calm, that I will be a bit more destructive, unproductive if I don't use. And it makes, because it heightens your senses. So you are kind of more in tune with things. And so in the beginning, And even just using it, it's, if you've never used, you wouldn't understand why someone uses it. So it gives pleasure. I dare say that there are two things that drives all of us, two major things psychologically. We are driven towards pleasure, or are driven away from pain, and cannabis does those two things for you.
Okay, so in trying to talk to, the young population, which is the population that usually uses this thing the most.
Yeah, that's correct.
What do you replace as a pleasure-giving pastime? What do you replace cannabis with?
Okay, well, the thing is this. I would say that you replace it with filling in your time with other activities. So people who, there's this, I can't remember the nation now. What they did there, Europe, I know it's a nation in Europe, but I can't remember the specific. What they did was that they increased after school activities, and encourage families and encourage parents to spend more time with their kids. So it wasn't just a case of quality time, but to also increase their time, which is quantity time.
You're hitting something that, I listened to. Somebody was talking about how you shouldn't vilify the user, but you should give him other things to do, that they are missing connection.
That's correct.
That's correct?
That's correct.
That there's got to be more connection between them, their families, friends, and all that. And then they wouldn't be wanting the drugs.
That's correct. So extracurricular activities, if someone is engaged in some form of learning things, especially during the holidays, get them engaged. They are less likely going to, it's one of the reasons why people use is boredom, peer pressure. So if the peer is right, what pressure? You'll be pressuring yourself into good things, not wrong things.
That's right.
And then parents just, I want to stress this, that parents can do all that is right and the kid still turns out,
So sometimes it's not their fault.
So I want to really, really stress that, because some parents often will say, where did I go wrong? What did I do wrong? And all of that.
Okay, so I want to quickly find out, what was it like for drug use during the COVID-19 pandemic? Did it increase? Did it go down? Because remember, especially during the lockdown, movement was restricted. So what was happening?
Yeah. So initially, initially there was a drop, with the first, when the pandemic started and the lockdown, so people didn't have access, because also we're trying to understand the whole COVID thing, like contact and all of that. But as the months went by, people had their way, getting the drugs across. Money has always been a major factor why the drug war is like an ongoing thing. The money that comes out of drug is crazy. So people will keep pushing, and people will keep using because it creates pleasure. So with the increase in boredom and increase in isolation, there was also increase in drug use for some people.
Just because people were lonely.
Exactly.
And they say that this connection thing that they're talking about is not necessarily, let him read his books more or anything, but it's like more of a love connection thing, friendship connection. But we'll come to that later. We have to take a break right now. Let's take a short break. When we come back is when you can call and ask questions about the topic. See you. Welcome back. We're talking about the war on drugs, substance use. And the number to call if you have questions on this matter is 0808-054-2233. It's going to be on your screen for questions about substance use while we go on with the topic. Where do we start from? They say that they are making these drugs even more potent.
Yeah.
So maybe it's not hooking them anymore. Let's do double strength, triple strength. Like you said, there's money involved, so the pushers will push. But is there any collaboration of any sort with whoever to make these illegal, illicit drugs not come in? Because ultimately, if drugs are passing through, users will be on the way.
Well, collaborations have always existed. The NDLEA, they are doing all that they can. A lot of NGOs, a lot of bodies, the UNODC, they greatly support people in terms of increasing awareness in schools. So there is both the fight to reduce supply and also to reduce usage. And by reducing usage, for example, like a program like this, we are increasing awareness so that people understand, the truth or the other side about drugs. So there are quite a lot of collaboration, and the war goes on. The war
does indeed go on.
Yeah.
So I'm going to ask you something that is going to sound a bit personal.
Okay.
What would you tell your son or daughter
to
discourage him or her from experimenting, from using? What would you say? Just for the parents out there to hear.
I think I would like to show them, because I will tell, but I would also show. Because telling sometimes the person may hear and it just passes by. And, they watch a lot of YouTube, they watch a lot of TikTok, they watch a lot of all of that. So I would also like to take them to places where people who are struggling, with drug use, to also show them. So I think I would like to do both to help my children as regards that.
Okay, so what would you tell a mom or dad to look out for in case they were suspecting something? Parents have all sorts of suspicions.
Yeah.
Your child came home late. Oh my gosh, she's out with bad people.
Mm-hmm.
Or she's looking tired. She must be using something. It happens all the time. What should they really be? What should show them a sign? What would be a red flag to a parent?
Okay, so we have to tread carefully, because, like you said, parents have continuous suspicion, and sometimes this suspicion put off children. But check out for change in behavior, academic performance, change in friends, the kind of friends the person is keeping. Watch out for those things. Watch out even for things as basic as the eyes, the lips, whether in terms of hygiene, whether those things are changing. If the person is coming home with red eyes and looking, and maybe there are discolorations on the lips, you look out for those things. And I would strongly say this, that if you suspect those things, it's a lot of wisdom to not just talk.
Okay, we'll get to the wisdom, but Godwin is on the line and I want him to talk. Hello, Godwin from Delta.
Hello.
Hello, we can hear you, Godwin. What's your question?
Good afternoon. Are you hearing me?
Definitely.
Okay, now. You were saying about NDLE something. Those are the people who are aiding the boys. I have a very good evidence. When they want to arrest people who are selling this, it is them from the office. They will call the person. We are coming. They have agents. They are coming to pick you so you escape or clear your house. How are they helping us?
Unless you have proof of this, you can't exactly make these allegations.
Continue to say it.
Thank you, Godwin. We heard you. Okay, so assuming there are collaborations going on anywhere, what's your advice?
Well, what Godwin has said is just like in the treatment facility. Treatment facilities also have the struggle and the challenge of compromised staff. But that doesn't mean that they are not truthful people or decent people. This is a money war also. There's exchange of money. So sometimes people get compromised. But that doesn't stop the fact or change the fact that the NDLEA is doing a great job, and quite a number of people are, and there are a lot of people also there trying to make a difference. So it's not, rather than just raise accusations, it's point out those, have proof, point out those who are involved.
Have proof.
And then,
so Godwin, a little proof would help, and then you can point those people out. Now, you were talking about somebody who has just discovered My son is coming home, his eyes are red.
Yeah.
He's behaving somehow. His lips are discolored. How do you approach the issue?
Okay, so first things first, engage the child, talk with the child, try and listen, try and really, really listen. And listening doesn't mean you are trying to agree with the person, but you really want to create this atmosphere where the child feels some level of is confident to talk to you about it. But if you struggle with that, please quickly find someone else, a professional, contact
To
someone
talk to the
to
child.
talk with the child.
Okay, let's
and the
take-
professional can even be someone else. It doesn't have to be a professional. It can just be someone who's good at talking with kids.
Let's see if Femi is on the line. Hello, Femi, are you there? Hello, Femi.
Hello.
Yeah. What's your question?
Yeah. Good morning. Am I on here now?
You are.
Okay. Good morning, Ma. Good morning, Doctor. Yeah. Can you hear me now?
Yes, go ahead with your question.
No, it's not a question. Personally, I want to agree with the doctor on the use of drugs, but I want us to stress one point at every other time, that drug use is bad. I've not been into drugs, but listening to my favorite channel this morning, I'm okay with it. But it should not sound as if someone should go and experiment the drug. That's the way it's sounding to me this morning. I'm sorry to say it, beg to differ. So please let us at every point in time highlight the fact that drug use is bad. I like the point when the doctor said someone was on drugs for 17 years before he got affected with whatever, maybe psychological or problem of mental
And he
breakdown.
decided to stop.
So let us highlight such things so that
Thank you so much,
people don't
Femi.
want to go and experiment.
Okay, so I believe you've already spoken about how you would stop someone from trying to experiment by talking and showing. And you haven't exactly said drugs are good.
No.
You just said it gives a feeling.
Yeah.
And that's why they get hooked, right?
That's correct.
But drugs are bad.
Yeah.
Okay, so that point is out there.
Okay.
Now, the UNODC in 2019 said only 1 out of 7 people who needed help for addiction was getting help. But now they're saying 1 in 8. So it's a worse scenario than before. How do you get people to come out for help?
So one of the things that can be done is so we're leveraging on technology, leveraging on other means, because one of the challenge with treatment is the cost of treatment. That is a massive challenge. So I will put this call out there that, let's leverage on technology and make treatment a bit more accessible. And treatment, in some other climates, they are reducing. Some people have to go into residential care, but not everyone.
Rehab.
Yes, not everyone. And so getting better at being able to screen who would require residential care and who doesn't require residential care. So there needs to be greater training in terms of people, because there are quite a number of people who are passionate about helping, but they are not necessarily knowledgeable about helping. So people need to get better trained, better skill, and know how to separate that, so that we can have more people that are not necessarily, because it's like a spectrum. There are some people on a very severe aspect of the spectrum and may need higher level of care, and some are not. We can't just put everybody in that same box and have the same treatment. So we have to get better at that.
In one word, do you agree with other people that mental health care should be brought to the primary health care level?
Oh, 100%.
Thank you so much for coming. We're at the end of the show. Thank you very much. That was wonderful. And thank you, Godwin and Femi, for your questions and contributions. To everybody else, have a great day. I am Mary Alale Yusuf.